We can't control everything our viewer experiences, but there are things that we can and should do, because doing them right means we get a better chance at selling our work and getting an exhibition. So, let's talk presentation. What's up? My name's Matej and you're watching The Surviving Art Show, the place where we take the angst of post-industrial man under late capitalism and turn it into a pretty flower picture. On this channel, we focus on the business side of art, from pricing your work to finding exhibitions and getting signed by galleries, to just figuring out how to sell your work online and show it to your collector base and followers. So, if you're new here, consider subscribing. In 1976, Brian O'Doherty published his article Inside the White Cube, not only creating a lot of buzz inside the art world, but giving this mode of presentation a catchy new name. His point was simple. People experience things as a whole, not as a collection of parts or small individual pieces. For example, when looking at a red triangle, we don't just see the color red or just a triangle, we cannot not see a red triangle as a total sum of all of its parts. And it's similar to music. You can't just listen to guitar tunes and pretend it's a saxophone or unhear the modality or the color of the tone, but you hear the color, you hear the tone, you hear the pitch, you hear all of it together as a whole in an instant. We as beings need context for pretty much everything, because without it we cannot really understand what we're looking at or experiencing. For example, if I were to say that something is big, you would think about something smaller because you'd need the comparison to understand what big actually means. Therefore, big can mean a rock, it can mean a skyscraper, or it can mean the world itself. It all depends on what you compare it to. And that's the context. But what does this have to do with art? Well, everything really, because art is subjective. We need lots of context to understand each individual piece. It's pretty much the only way we can understand art is via its context. For example, if you paint a picture of a woman picking an apple tree and say that 4 times, but if you put it and exhibit it in some juice company, people will understand it as just a lady picking apples, maybe as a slogan or as just some kind of promotional work for the company. But put that painting in a church or a Christian community center and people will see, probably, the abstract, complex concept of ancestral sin. Same painting, but different context, incredibly different messages. So, what can we do as creatives to give more context to our work and help people understand our message easier? Choose materials carefully, not just as a means to create your art, but as building blocks of your narrative. The point here is simple. If you make a sculpture out of stone, it will look differently than if you would have made the sculpture out of wood or plaster or a bunch of twigs. Because stone is a strong, hard and long-lasting substance with a very, very long lineage back in history, going back to old Greek and Roman statues. I mean, imagine your aunt being depicted in a marble sculpture. She would look like a Roman emperor. Not sure if that's good or bad, but you get the point. Tip number 2. Evoke emotions and seal the deal with a well-prepared concept. People experience life, and art consequently the same, on an emotional level first. It's the stimuli we get from outside that make us feel a certain way. And only after we get this feeling, be it a good, a pleasant or a bad feeling, regardless, can we actually think about what we are feeling and rationalize the situation. So, if you want your art to attract people, to be interesting to people, it doesn't just have to be beautiful, it can be ugly, but the point is you need to aim at evoking emotion first. Be it disgusting, happy, sad, melancholic, you name it, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you evoke a powerful emotion. Because after people feel a certain way towards your painting, they get intrigued. When you become intrigued about something, you get curious and you step a little bit closer and you look at the thing, and then you can rationalize what the art piece actually means to you and to somebody else. Just the relation you can build up with the art piece only happens if it is interesting first. This is especially important for anybody who does more of conceptual work, because yes, concepts are great, but it can be a little bit demanding for people to understand them or to approach them, especially if your artwork is a ball of hay with a neon light shoved in it. Don't do these things. I mean, conceptualism has its place, but there are borders that we should not cross. And maybe you like the voice poop machine. I am not a fan though, but to each his own, right? Tip number 3. Presentation is incredibly important. That's the whole point of this video. But what I mean by this is where you exhibit your work will influence how people understand your work. Take the white cube principle, for example. This was made especially for modernist works, because the modernist work was supposed to be frameless, put it on a white wall to really radiate outwards and really captivate the audience with its powerful emotional bond, the thing we talked about in tip number 2. So if you take a look at something made by Rothko or Pollock, you will feel some emotion towards it if you take your time and actually, observe the painting. Not just go past it and feel like you've seen it all, but really take your time. And the whole point of the white cube was that people enter and their bodies get dissolved and we all become small little ghosts traveling through galleries with only our vision, not really our eyes, just our vision floating around in white gallery spaces and just observing the immaculate sublime of art. And it's all a little bit bullshit to me, but the point is, Rothko will look good in a white cube because it will look like this idol, this giant piece of color that just looks at you and it captivates you and it's powerful. But put it in a cellar somewhere and maybe throw a little bit of dirty socks on it, you know what I mean? It just won't look great. It'll look like somebody cleaned their brushes on canvas and it kind of spilled and they just said, oh, fuck it, it looks okay, so I'll just leave it as it is. Which gets us to tip number 4, which is the venue itself is really important. This is pretty much tip number 3 with an added bonus that we talk about something else than just the white cube. But here's my point. The point here is that when you exhibit your work, keep in mind where you'll be showing your work. Another example is Impressionist works. Impressionists used a lot of flowers and pots to give this feeling of some nature inside the gallery, and the gallery walls tend to be colored in earthy tones, sometimes blue or yellow or green, and it really gives this warm, fuzzy feeling when you enter a room full of Impressionist works if it's done correctly. But again, abstract expressionism with flowers just looks crap. So, if you can, try to think ahead where your work will be shown. If it's online, well, you can't do much, can you, except make a good picture of the work and give some context. But if you're showing it in a real space, if you can, try to arrange the space so it complements your work, and try to think also about other artists if it's a group exhibition, that the other people also have their works exhibited, and it is the gallerist's job to find a nice fit for everybody, but you can also think ahead and maybe not put a giant golden frame on your work if nobody else is going to have their work framed, because you'll just, you'll be a pompous prick at the show. And if that's what you want, gold frames, expensive but worth it. So, regardless of what art you create and where you're showing it or how you're showing it, if you think about all these factors together, you can reverse engineer them and find the perfect fit for your work. It can also help you find the right exhibition spaces for your work. Like, for example, I loved that I could exhibit my collages in an empty church back in 2000 something. I'm not sure, my memory's crap. But it was a beautiful space, and the whole collages, I'll put a link, I'll put an image of one of the collages on the screen so you can, they just looked amazing. There was natural light from the giant windows because it was something it was a weird English Baroque church with giant windows. It was more of a chapel, really. Well, it looked amazing. But to know that your work looks good in some spaces but may look bad in others is a great thing to keep in mind. Think ahead of where you'll be showing your work because it helps immensely to make it more presentable, and consequently you get more chances to sell it, or at least get a few followers on Instagram. Thanks for watching.